Hi everyone, my name is Martin Tyler and I'm the Head of Quality Engineering for FX Digital. I've been involved in test automation really for most of my career. I've been responsible at FX for developing the first automation frameworks we had, but also the latest generation of test automation frameworks. And I'd like to introduce you to my colleague Taha.
Hey everyone, my name is Taha and I'm a software developer here at FX Digital, working on the QE team with Martin. I joined a little over a year and a half ago, and at that time we were just called the automation team. And yeah, got exposed to the concept of test automation and something just clicked. I found my passion working on this massive piece of software. And yeah, we're here to tell you a little bit about the very long and difficult journey that we had building up our automation infrastructure to what it is today.
So I'm sure many of you already know the reasons why you'd want to use test automation in connected TV, but I wanted to share with you some of the reasons that we think it's so important at FX. The first one being, in connected TV you have to scale across many different platforms. There's no one clear winner in the living room as to one device you should target first. You need to launch across many and quite quickly as well. This issue is further compounded because people just aren't replacing these devices. In an industry like mobile, maybe you keep your device for 2 years and you get a new contract. That's just not the same in connected TV, and we're seeing like the need to support devices for 5 or even more years. The next one is to reduce time and cost. It would be possible to have huge teams of QAs testing all of these devices, all these platforms, all these model years, but realistically, most companies aren't going to pay for that, and therefore we need a way of testing lots of devices with fewer people. Not only that, but manual testing is really slow, so we want to test these features quickly and get it out to market. So that's the second main reason, and then the third is human error. If we were to ask a team of QAs to repeat the same tests again and again on different platforms and different model years, eventually human nature would take over and people would just start getting complacent, paying less attention, and then that's when defects start to slip through the cracks. So that's why we think test automation is so important in connected TV at FX.
So a little bit about who we are. FX Digital is a connected TV agency. Within that, we exist as the Quality Engineering Department, QE. We're responsible for developing and maintaining the test automation tools used by our quality assurance team to test applications built by our development team or external parties. We built our test automation framework all in-house with connected TVs and set-top boxes at the forefront of our planning and development process. But that's not where our work stops. We're also responsible for building and creating multiple other tools that can, assist in manual testing or automate certain processes. It's not either or. Sometimes it's about striking a balance between automated and manual. We're also responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of our device lab, which you can see here, that we have on premises in our London office. We have every device that we've ever needed to test on, and with plenty of room for expansion.
So we want to jump now into the challenge of building a connected TV framework or finding one, because there are options available that you can go and use. Some open source, some are paid for. But when we were trying to work out what framework we wanted at FX, we knew that we needed to go against our core principles of testing. And the first one is we didn't want to make any modifications to the application. As soon as you start modifying the application, you're getting away from what the customer's actually using, and then therefore you can't really rely on the results as much. And you're back to square one, repeating a lot of manual testing just to make sure your results are correct. The next one is we knew we needed a connected TV first framework. There's many frameworks out there that are really designed for web and mobile, and then maybe TV's put in as a bit of an afterthought, but there's plenty of features in connected TV you won't find anywhere else, such as using remote controls for navigation and things like focus tracking, really key points of the applications, and we knew we needed something for connected TV first. And then finally, we needed a framework that was completely agnostic of the underlying application framework. At FX Digital, we build most of our applications using a framework called Lightning.js, which renders all of the elements inside a DOM into just one single element, an image, using something called WebGL. This is amazing for the developers because they can create these really performant applications, but creates a huge problem for QAs because we can't interrogate the DOM anymore, and that's traditionally how you would run test automation. So we knew we needed a vision-based test framework.
So we have a very intricate ecosystem of microservices and environments at play, scaled to handle the load from automation at FX. First and foremost, we have our image comparison service, or ICS for short. It's the heart and core of our testing framework with one simple task: to employ a proprietary vision algorithm to determine whether an element is present on a page, be it using a design template or a cutout from a screenshot on the TV. This is really the key behind our vision-based testing. And then we have the real-time audio-video evaluator, the big brother of ICS. This API, apart from having a cool name, abbreviated to RAVE, does one of two things. It can determine the quality of a video or determine its state, playing, paused, or buffering. And then what would we do without our web drivers? But first you might ask, what is a web driver? Well, to put it simply, it's the bridge between our framework and the real devices. We have a few of them, and they're all built in-house because, surprisingly, connected TVs or devices are very fragmented. They have different protocols for everything, and we needed a solution to abstract that. And last but not least, the environment containing all this magic are CI pipelines. We run everything within containerized CI/CD so that we can guarantee none of the test results are infected in any way by the runtime. And yeah, that's it really. You take image comparison service, chuck in a couple of web drivers, throw it all together in a runtime, then you've got a framework. Boom, automation infrastructure. The end. Thank you for listening.
Hold on a second. That was exactly what we thought as well. This is actually when the real challenge began. We were celebrating the fact that we built this automation framework and all this infrastructure around it. And our QA teams loved it, they were using it, and coverage was increasing, but the pass rates were slipping, and they dropped as low at one point to 5%. And then this is what this talk's really about. This is the journey of us scaling up from merely having a test automation framework to actually using it on a daily basis and changing the way that the company worked around that. Before we jump into telling you about all the different problems, or at least a lot of the different problems we faced, I want to talk to you about the process we came to. You may think that the process on the screen looks really simple, and it does look simple, but it took us a long time to come to that, and there's lots of intricacies and ways we tripped up in order to find this process. Let me just share the process with you. So first of all, when we take on a new application, we kick off two activities at the same time. First of all, the QA team will start the test case design, and then the QE team will start the technology setup. So if we haven't seen the device in the past, we'll have to build the WebDriver, and maybe if we've got a new feature, we have to build some new code to test that new feature. And then once that's all done, it will go into what we call our daily test cycle. This is where the automation test is run overnight, and then in the morning, the QAs will have a Slack message to say, this started passing, this started failing, and they'll look into the logs of those particular test cases, understand if they need to raise defects or maybe fix the test cases in some instances, and deliver a report, normally before the first stand-up in the morning to the rest of the project team. And then finally, the fixes will be made by our engineering team during the day, and then the cycle starts again overnight.
So one of the first problems we faced was the low priority given to writing and maintaining automated test cases. This really resulted in QAs who saw the value of automation and wanted to use it, just not being given the time to do so. So to address that, we sent out a survey to see how the rest of the business understood the automation, and this uncovered some misconceptions on the impact it brought to the projects that they were on, such as it being too strict. And based on those results, we began educating all the project team members on the benefits of automation and its long-term advantages to projects. But then even after everyone knew how great automated testing is, we had to battle with the fact that projects had already begun. And this meant that we were playing catch-up, converting test cases that were manual from the start to automating. So this is where we saw the value of creating a test case generator. We noticed that a lot of the test cases tend to be repetitive. Find all the elements on the page and make sure that buttons have the correct behavior. And since we wrote all our test cases in a human-readable language called Gherkin, we were able to generate boilerplate for the QAs very, very quickly that they can then use to expand on. Having a test case generator also benefited QAs who were very highly skilled in manual automation, upskill in writing automated testing. This tool helped them get familiar with the syntax and how to really use the automation. But we also found that the results were really only visible to us or the QAs by looking through CI pipeline logs, which, trust me, no one really wants to do. This is the reason I have a vertical monitor on my desk. So we then realized we had to up our reporting game. And this is where we saw the value of adding in the Slack bots that Martin mentioned, which would give you a quick overview of an automation run with what began to pass and what began to fail. We also generated some static web pages with a nice GUI that then anyone in the business can really just go and look at and see what's failing, what's passing. This meant that the QAs only focused on what failed, ignoring everything else.
Now, I mentioned that the pass rates were dropping, but it wasn't necessarily clear why they were dropping, whether it was bugs in the framework that we just created, or the test cases were written slightly wrong, or maybe it was a genuine bug in the front-end application we were testing. And we needed a way to go through all the logs on a daily basis, really, between QE and QA to understand the reasons that these were failing, give us a chance to actually train the QA team as well on how to read the logs, what sort of things to look for, and fixing the bugs as we went. The next issue we found was devices kept going offline. So with set-top boxes and TVs, they don't necessarily want to be left on all the time. Sometimes they need to be reset, and it's really a matter of trial and error to try and find how you can handle it, which ones need to be reset. So we bought some smart sockets, and we were able to power cycle some of the devices, and this kept it much more stable, and things were running a lot more better overnight. And then for the first time, we were a victim of our own success. Tests were starting to pass, but the microservices were crashing under the load, and we had to learn how to scale these sideways in order to cope with this new demand. This was a learning curve for both of us as well. And again, we were a victim of our own success, where our Mac Mini fell over as we were adding more and more devices. And we were starting everything at 6 p.m. every night. We had to spread this out. Unfortunately, this wasn't the final solution we came to, as you'll hear in a minute.
So as projects moved forward, this meant that things changed, and we didn't really have a process in place to receive updates from project teams on things that can break automated test cases, such as CMS changes or what new devices are coming down the pipeline. So we passed that on to the QAs, putting in a process for figuring out what test cases would break given a backend change, and a compulsory notice period for new devices. But then our test runs were simply taking too long as we kept adding in test cases to the CI pipelines. And so this is when we had to reevaluate and look at our code base, introducing certain optimizations in place. This cut down test case execution on some Samsung TVs from around 500 minutes to 150 minutes. That's a 70% improvement right there. But even with all these improvements, speeding up test case execution and staggering test runs, that simply wasn't enough. Our Mac Mini just died. Till one day, I just logged onto it to run some maintenance, and I saw that we had no running containers. And to put it simply, we broke Docker. Not just containers, not running containers, but the actual Docker engine. And so this was a bit of a wake-up call. We realized that we needed to scale the hardware now. So enter the age of Catalyst, a monster of a server that's capable of handling all of our project's automation needs. So yeah, automation was now heavily relied on in the business, and that was great to see. But as with most things go, that was a bit of a double-edged blade. I love seeing the automation in use every single day, but our support was just simply not scaled to handle it. So beginning to receive requests about things not working, essentially, or how QAs can get set up, This meant I was just at 100% capacity, and I couldn't really work on new improvements, or we couldn't really add any of the things that we wanted to now that we had automation fully in use. Thankfully, we had a QA who was highly skilled in test automation, who got to grips with the framework very, very quickly, and we were able to use his help to get all the projects that we have in the business set up on the framework very quickly.
And then, yeah, finally we did it. I don't exactly remember the moment when everything came together, but I know we looked at the statistics one day, and it kind of all just fell into place. I've put some statistics up here on the screen, and this was from the last month alone of what sort of testing we've been doing. So I won't go through everything because I'm sure you can read through it. But for Dine, for example, we tested across 6 devices with a 76% coverage rate. So that's 76% of our test cases being run every single night. And to put that into context, that's 32,319 test cases run in 1 month alone on one project. And we estimate that saved around 135 days of QA time. So this is a serious cost saving for the business, but it's also really raising the level of quality of the apps that we can produce at FX. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the lessons we learned. We learned a lot of lessons along the way, and I could probably talk for another hour about all the lessons we learned and all the things we had to go through. But these are the main ones. First of all, automating on set-top boxes and TVs is hard. I've come from test automation in automotive and aviation, and everyone kind of jumps up and down and goes, wow, that must have been super difficult and super impressive. But no, set-top boxes and TVs are much worse because they're super locked down. They're not designed to be able to get the information off of them. And even when you do get to that point, the docks are normally not that great. It's not always the case, but in a lot of instances, they're not that great. The next one is nothing beats sitting with your users as they're using your automation framework. I spoke earlier about the sessions where we would sit down between the QA and the QE team, and we really use this as a process to sit and look over their shoulder and go, okay, this is a bit of a bottleneck in the process, and maybe we could create a tool to streamline this process. And day by day, bit by bit, we were able to iterate over, and that leads me nicely to the next point, is we iterated very slowly. Every day we would get the software a little bit better, and every day we would get the process a little bit better until the point you saw on screen there. And the last thing that I want to leave you guys with, and please, if you only take one thing away from this presentation, let it be this: people and process are more important than technology. We had the technology at the start. It was making next to no impact on the business. It was only when we got the people and process into place that we really started to see the benefit. So yeah, please just remember this, if you just remember one thing from this presentation. Now, we do have a couple of demo videos, but I'm conscious that we want to leave a little bit of time for questions. So if you want to see the demo videos, please come and see me or Taha afterwards, and we will happily run you through those. And we've also got a video of our test lab, but again, come and see us afterwards, and we'll be more than happy to show you that. And yeah, with that, I'd like to open the floor to questions if anyone has anything they would like to ask us.
Just raise your hand if you do have any. I can bring you a mic.
Hello, thank you very much for the talk. I'm curious to probably quite technical questions on this. Firstly, the way that you're handling your rendering with WebGL, how do you ensure device accessibility across different TV manufacturers?
So we're the quality engineering team, and definitely not the right people to ask. But if you ask Matthew Doig that in the networking afterwards, he will answer your question way better than I would. So
I will chase Matthew and find him. And then the second thing that I was curious about was you mentioned you were testing on Mac Minis. Did you have any luck testing on real devices? Because obviously the performance and the chips on device are going to be far worse.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, you raise a really good point there. So we were running our automation software on the Mac Mini, but we always test on real devices. Yeah. So we did at the start experiment with Puppeteer, but you're 100% right. It's not the same. So that's why we run overnight rather than testing on each individual commit. So we obviously have a finite number of devices, and yeah, we run every night on the real devices on all the different platforms that each project supports.
How do you decide on which devices to use? Because you had 3 on one, 5 on the other, but you said you had hundreds of devices.
Well, that really depends on the project team and their needs. So it depends entirely on what they want to automate on, really. That's all, yeah.
So you don't do sort of resolution size or anything like that?
Well, that really lies with the QA team and their process on what to decide, what to test on.
Yeah, we do. On some of the devices, we've got like some 720p devices and some 1080 So to be honest, those numbers, in all fairness, are slightly misleading. We had a lot more devices on Dyne at one point, but because of the number of accounts that we've got in production, we had to reduce that down to some more key ones. But yeah. We're up to about 17 devices at one point on Dyne, so that was just last month, basically.
Got one over here.
How are you capturing the output from the TVs?
So that's all done entirely using a solution that we came up with all-in-one in the TV itself, and it's proprietary.
Because you talked about you were testing the video playback experience, so it's not just images you're capturing then.
Our video playback is currently our video playback testing is only limited to set-top boxes at the moment, but we're under development for TVs right now.
Okay, I get it. Cheers.
Yeah.
You mentioned around the QA and QE teams sometimes having sit-downs to see the users on each side and identify bottlenecks. Would you typically do that in person or virtually, and why?
I think we always did those in person. So we generally, as a company, we spend a lot of time in the office, and that's because, much like the point was mentioned over here, testing on real devices is key in this field. And I think actually sitting down and watching someone do it, looking over their shoulder, you can understand the bottlenecks a lot better than you could maybe with like a screen share or something like that. So yeah, I think it's just to really build that rapport between the QA and QE teams, it's important to be there in person together.
Bro, thank you.
I think David had one as well. Just
Hello. Hi. Thanks for your presentation. How do you avoid getting to an unmanageable amount of tests? Do you have like an audit criteria for the value of your tests that you run on a regular basis?
Yeah. So generally speaking, what happens is when a app is in active development, we run a lot more test cases on it, and then if we have some platforms that are finished and we then move on to the next platforms, we'll reduce that down to like a smoke test. So we can we tag all of the key tests basically with a smoke tag test, and they'll be run. But again, because we've done so much time working on our process to actually evaluate the results, we've got like Slack bots that show you just like the changes rather than you having to look through the entire logs and stuff like that. It is quite quick for us to review the logs and review things in the morning. So we've not really run into a problem where we've got this unmanageable amount of failures coming in. Generally it's a case of it's quite quick to review anyway. So.
How do you deal with like identifying and handling like flaky tests when you've got them in your suite? Do things become flaky or like over time when things are in active development, and like how do you identify them basically? Do you rely on like because I know that the AWS have like not AWS, there are services that have like oh, we'll identify them for you kind of things. Do you have that kind of thing running, or do you just
That really goes under the review process that the QAs go through every morning, and sometimes it would be a back-end failure or that would get resolved the next day. And as Martin mentioned, the Slack bot that we have really helps identify the test cases, and then we just go in deeper just from that surface level, go from there. I
think generally it's the same QA on the team that will handle that morning review, so they will notice as a particular test is maybe a bit unreliable than others, and if needs be, they would raise a defect on our side, and we'll look into that more deeply as well. If it's the test steps rather than the test itself.
I've got a question actually. How do you define and profile device performance, like frame rate and input latency and things like that?
At the moment, that's under development for something that we'd like to introduce into our framework, but we just don't do it yet.
Thank you.
Hello, great talk. Have you had any kind of passings with the DAB solution?
Yes.
And have you got any plans to integrate that? And how does that kind of conflict with this proprietary integration that you guys have made?
Absolutely. We'd love to integrate with DAB going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really that would just be a replacement for our web drivers. So we already can swap out between Puppeteer, although we don't use that integration anymore, and Appium. So DAB will be the next thing that's added in as soon as we can get our hands on a DAB compatible device.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're really excited because we spend a lot of our time working on our web drivers, when if we didn't have to do that, we could really push more features in our framework. So yeah, we're very excited for DAB basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, us too. Great stuff. Cheers, thanks.
Thank you.
We do have a couple of minutes left, and we had a request from online to have a little look at the demos, the videos you mentioned.
Okay. So, I think
It's just roles.
so. This, unfortunately, the other video is not playing, but this is a video of our test lab, and this is our manual testing area in our office. Another video of our test lab here. So this is all the TVs. Because we don't need cameras in front of them, we can stack them quite closely together. One of our QA workstations. And yeah, back to our device, our manual testing suite again. And then yeah, you can see here our set-top boxes on the shelves. If we can, we get the images directly from the devices. Sometimes we have to use capture cards and stuff like that. I don't think that was any in the video there. Yeah, sorry about the other video. It doesn't seem to want to play.
All right, well, thank you very much. That was a great talk.
Thank you very much, everyone.